In the city, a thriving metropolis encompassing 1/3 billion souls, a man can change his world as easily as crossing the street. It is a place of a million cultures, the world in microcosm. For some, it is their last hope for survival. For others, it is their playground. And for others yet, it is their hunting ground. Isaac Sarason is a talented hacker, a doctor of applied network theory, trusted employee of British Telecom-Sprint. He lived in a world which 90% of his fellow citizens can only imagine. And he has a problem. His health is failing. His job is on the line. His world is crumbling around him. He wants out. And the street is his only escape. What happens when the life you dreamed of is killing you? What do you do when you find yourself hijacked? Colbyjack.net is proud to present Firmware, Hijacked, written and performed by R.L. Ferguson. Firmware, Hijacked. Episode 7. 11. Nona told me of the loss of her mother to Euphria. The uncontrolled rage the drug caused in her mother, the violence that rose within her mother's chest as the drug faded, how in a violent rage her mother beat her brother to death. He was only 3 and was hungry, so he cried. She told of being only 5 and holding her brother tight, crying silent tears as he continued to wail. There were no groceries. No money for food. Her mother had spent her entire food allowance on Euphria. Her father worked at Jakia Farms, a 40-story warehouse bordering McCarthy Pines, converted into an urban farm. He was a gentleman. She said he was much like me. He would bring home bruised and damaged vegetables and greens. She once asked her father if they had eaten borscht for a week straight. He smiled and said, "No, not that long, little one. It has been a month." She cried as she spoke of him. On the night her brother died, he was late. The tomatoes were ripe, and they were short-handed. When he got home after midnight, it was already too late. Her baby brother, little Joseph, darling, hungry Joseph, was dead, ripped from their hiding spot under the bathroom sink where Nona had clamped her hand over his throat to save him from their mother, and failed. Nona tried to hold her brother, to keep him close, to keep him safe, but her mother was too strong. Nona told of watching her mother open each cupboard in turn. She showed Joseph the empty shelves thick with dust and then slammed his head in the door. Nona, 5-year-old Nona, said she couldn't run, couldn't scream, couldn't do anything but watch as her mother slammed her poor baby brother's head in one cupboard after another. Then, when he only whimpered and blood ran from cuts on his head, his ears, his nose, his lips and chin, her mother looked at him in disgust and put him in the fresher and set it to steam clean. The only thing that saved Nona that night was the most primitive survival instinct, an instinct that drove her to find the smallest, darkest hole and remain there frozen in fear. It was from her vantage point, behind the grating of the building's ventilation shaft, that she watched as her mother came to realize what she had done. When she was older, she learned a dark depression followed close on the heels of rage when an addict came down from Euphria. Her mother collapsed on the couch, only moving when the fresher buzzed, its steam and dry cycle done. Her mother went to the fresher, saw the beet-red body of Joseph, and wailed. She knew what she had done, knew that she had crossed a line beyond which there was no redemption. Her mother took her own life with a kitchen knife in the bath. Nona didn't see this, but she heard the water run, a cry of pain, weeping, and then silence. Her father came home, tired and worn out, his back stiff, his shoulders bent, and knew something was wrong. The wail he made upon discovering his poor dead boy scared Nona more than her mother had. She remained frozen in her hiding spot, listening as her father discovered his wife in her bloody bath, heard the rage as his heart broke. The last memory she had of her father was of him storming out the door, a long kitchen knife in his hand. Later, she'd learned a Euphria dealer in Jian village had killed him. The dealer gunned her father down. Her father lived long enough to stab the dealer in the throat. The dealer lived. Her father died. She learned this when hunger drove her from her hiding spot and into the arms of Leo. Leo, a block captain of the Lumadiza family, had come around when it became known her father was dead. He came to notify the family, to let them know the family could help. Instead, he found Nona, filthy from hiding in the ducts, Joseph in the fresher, and a bathtub full of mother. She remembered the smell of his aftershave, a medicine smell tinged with exotic spices and manly confidence. He took her in his arms and carried her from the abattoir of her home to the tea room in the back of the Red Square. There he fed her khachapuri, a bread boat filled with cheese and butter topped with an egg. She drank milk by the glass and ate khinkali, knots of dough stuffed with meat and spices, until her stomach distended before her. Fed and comforted, Leo introduced her to Bibia Chukumia. Bibia Chukumia was a small, withered woman born in Georgia. She'd fled Tbilisi before it became fashionable to flee the bloody Tsar. Her Georgian was hard to understand. The city had changed the language immensely in the intervening half-century, and her beliefs on the training of young women were positively medieval. To me, Bibia Chukumia sounded like one of the nuns from St. Ohi's School for Boys, the type of woman who thought kneeling on pencils built character. When I told Nona about St. Ohi's, she agreed. Bibia Chukumia was the guardian of no less than a dozen girls, appointed by the Lumadiza family to care for the souls as well as the bodies of her charges. The girls slept in a long common room, sometimes 3 to a pallet, subsisted on food donated by Georgie's Market and the Rustaveli Quick Stop. They started each morning with the antidoron and a sip of holy water. They kneeled before the icon of St. Zorokos each morning, followed by the Virgin Mary. They performed the liturgy every morning. Any mistake earned a ruler to the back of the head. On Sundays, Bibia Chukumia's girls arrived at St. Nino's on Kolastra an hour before services, 5 a.m., as St. Nino's was the greatest of the Georgian Orthodox churches in Little Russia. They polished the beautiful gates, dusted the manulia, set everything from the narthex to the sanctuary right. Bibia Chukumia rented the girls to Heli Farms, where they spent long hours picking truck crops under harsh UV LEDs. From what I gathered from Nona, Bibia Chukumia treated the girls only a little better than slaves. By the time Nona was 10, she knew she wanted more from life than picking vegetables and the liturgy. She watched the older girls, the 12, 13, and 14-year-olds, seek other employment. She knew there were girls up to 17 years of age living with Bibia Chukumia. And they didn't live in the great hall, where on cold nights the girls huddled together for warmth. Over time, she discovered that Bibia Chukumia didn't care what the girls did as long as they paid her what was due. To stay in the common room was cheap. To gain a private room cost more, much more. Nona picked vegetables for 3 more years, sneaking out at night to find work. She was luckier than most of the older girls staying with Bibia Chukumia. They made their money on their backs or their knees, behind bars or in hourly hotels, all suffering indignities in search of a better life. Nona watched them and learned. She didn't need to earn at night. She still picked vegetables. One night she saw a boy in an Opemipo running suit. The boy ran down the street with confidence and strength. Images of Joseph Stalin glowed out at her from the magic fabric. It wasn't that the fabric was magic. Active fabric was a very boring part of modern life. It was the fact that a boy her own age, owned a suit that not only reacted to programming, but did so in a manner that was miles beyond the Ivorian fabric she was used to. She followed the boy until she lost him in a crowd. The next night she circled the block until she saw the boy with the glowing running suit. He ran like a maniac, dodging traffic, tearing across intersections. Naturally, she lost him again. Night after night she watched for him, until one night she came upon the Red Square. She saw him run inside, jacket ablaze with Joseph Stalin. She had heard of the Red Square. A number of the older girls came here to hook up with clients. Bibia Chukumia had warned them at great lengths about the nasty men who frequented there. Scared, she watched as the boy left the red square and ran down the block. She moved to follow. And then she saw Leo. Leo, the man who had fed her Chakapuri and Kekali when her world exploded all those years ago, stood just inside the entrance watching the boy race through the night. Nona adjusted her skirt, checked her face and hair in a car's mirror, and tentatively approached Leo. He didn't recognize her until she reminded him of her brother in the fresher, her mother in the tub. Tears ran down her cheeks as the memories rose within her for the first time in years. She almost ran. Instead, she held fast. She told Leo she wanted to work like the boy. She wanted to run through the night. She wanted to be more than an orphan girl waiting for a neighborhood boy to take her innocence. She didn't want to wait to become another destitute woman raising an angry man's brats. She wanted to do real work. She wanted to run with the freedom and wealth the boy in the jacket that glowed with mighty Joseph Stalin's face. Leo humored her. In fact, he put her off. Told her running was too dangerous for a girl, not safe at all. He told her picking vegetables was much safer. Then he sent her away. Nona was not put off. She would show Leo, prove to him she had what it took. From that night on, she ran everywhere, pushed her body to its limit, did the work at Ukhili farms reserved for the older boys, all in pursuit of proving herself to Leo. When she felt her wind grow within her, her speed increasing beyond what she thought possible, she started chasing the boy. The boy, Nicole, returned to the red square many times over the course of the night. Many were the nights she pursued him. At first he escaped her after only a block. Then it became 2, then 3, then 10 blocks. She pursued him with the persistence of Atalanta spurning suitors. Until one night, he could not lose her. She chased him from the red square to his delivery in Roanoke Park and back again, always on his heels, always right behind him. That night, Leo introduced her to Sergio Lumidizza. That night she became a runner. Bebia Chocomia did not approve, of course. But when her wages exceeded what she earned on the farm, the rightness of the job became unimportant. She still slept in the common room, 2 to 3 to a pallet, which infuriated Bebia Chocomia. She had better things to spend her money on than a place to sleep. Things like a Coach Vuitton running suit, Adidas Gerber reactive shoes, and a Nathan Alexander phone. Over the last 3 years, the business had changed from point-to-point runs. Jobs where she picked up packets from a sender and carried them to a receiver were a thing of the past. The new method involved moving packets from runner to runner or runner to way station. She no longer had direct contact with her client, and she enjoyed her work all the more. She still ran fast through traffic night after night, but the job had become safe. Something she could do with full knowledge that she was more than likely to survive the night. This work is released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike license. Do what you want with it. Remix it, re-record it, transcribe it, share it. Just don't sell it or change the terms of the license. Your creation must be released under an Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike license. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.